So it's time. I know. Aren't you excited? Yes, it's yoga time. It's yoga time. It's yoga time. So Joy's excited to start yoga. Today, if you have a block, that would be great. If you don't have a block, a couple of thick paperbacks will do fine. And I also have a chair handy. We're going to be looking at hip releases today. And Joy's going to help model what it looks like to have complete relaxation because she's very good at it. I'm going to move my mat over just a little bit. I see it's not centered. We're going to wait just a second here so people can join us. You're not actually helpful. Lay on the mat like that. I know you like to be helpful. So just a few starters. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. In our practice, there's no need to push anything. If I invite you to do an action or a pose that your body doesn't feel comfortable doing, please don't do it. There's no virtue in pushing through pain. There is going to be some discomfort today because hips typically are tight in people who sit in furniture, which would be us. I'll tell you that, okay? When there's something that's going to be a little bit on the uncomfortable side, I will make sure to let you know. But again, if your body says no, then please don't. This is your practice. It's my practice. It's her practice. This is joyful. So we're going to just find a comfortable seated position, whatever that means for you. I'm sitting cross-legged. Rest your hands somewhere on your legs. Close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. And begin to settle into this time and this space that you've set aside so that your body feels better. Our goal today, as every day, is to feel better when we get up off our mat than we did coming down to the mat. Allow your breath to be easy. Shoulders hang down. Arms are heavy. Begin to feel how your hips are at the beginning of our practice. For many people, sitting cross-legged is already a hip opener. If that's true for you, just go where it's mildly uncomfortable for you. This is supposed to be someplace that you could stay for a number of breaths without your eyes popping out. If your breath becomes uneven or you feel tension increasing in your body, whatever the pose is, you need to back out some so that your breath can return to a normal, soft breathing cycle. Belly is soft. Feel the belly fill with your inhale and close with your exhale. Thighs are heavy. Feet are relaxed. Allow yourself the luxury of the next 45 minutes or so to give your body the opportunity for opening. And open your eyes, interlace your fingers, palms away, arms overhead, and very slowly stretch from side to side, grounding the opposite side seat bone. You may notice already this is a hip opener for that opposite side hip. And begin to notice the two sides of your body. They're never quite even. And one of the purposes of yoga is to allow ourselves to be a little bit more symmetrical with each practice. And certainly the awareness of what's going on in your body is a primary feature of your practice. So even though this is a very simple movement, it is in fact a hip opener. It opens the side body on the opposite side, and it begins to also open the outer hip. And release the hands, interlace your fingers behind you, shoulder blades together, palms away from your body, looking up like the lady on the front of a ship, arching the back, belly poofs forward, looking up, push your chin out, letting the upper arms roll away from each other. So your elbow pits point forward, and that helps bring your shoulder blades together in the back. And then release your hands, right hand down, left arm up overhead, gaze is up underneath that left arm, and then allow your upper body to go over to the right, enough that you start to feel an opening on that left side body, left outer hip, left upper arm, gaze is upward. You can bend that right elbow or not. So you're really grounding through that left hip, the left seat bone. Breath stays easy. And then press yourself up, left hand down, right arm up overhead, gazing up underneath that right arm. Noticing that one side is always easier. That means one side is always tighter. And again, we're not going to push anything. This is just a practice for noticing. The phrase of the month is marginal gains. So we're looking for a tiny, tiny improvement with each practice. It doesn't have to be a great, big, giant opening, just some little tiny change. Little tiny changes add up over time. And the awareness that we bring to our practice helps tremendously in allowing things to evolve. Release that arm, place your hands in front of you, and begin to walk your hands out. And you'll notice this is also a hip opener. So the action is of pulling your hands towards you to help facilitate a back bend feeling in your low back. Gaze is upward. Notice that this is a hip opener for the outer hip of both sides, yes? And now walk your hands over to the right and notice that that's even more of an opening for that left outer hip, yes? Just breathe into your body. Breathe into that hip. Allow your body to be heavy within itself. And then walk your hands over to the left. Pet the cat on the way. Noticing the differences between your two sides. Isn't that interesting? And now walk back to the center and come forward. So I notice that I'm coming forward about 6 inches more than I did in the beginning. Isn't that interesting? Because that was not a tremendous effort to create that opening. It was a small effort. So we want to be able to allow things to evolve rather than force things into movement. Your hip, and walk your hands back. Your hips are surrounded by dense, fibrous connective tissue. And the reason is that that provides a lot of stability. The hips are a major part of our ability to stand upright on two legs. The bad news is this fibrous tissue has minimal elasticity. The good news is once it stretches or opens, it tends to stay stretched or open. So it's good news, bad news. But the deal is we have to do things slowly and hold poses for a long time. How long is a long time? Until you say, you know what, that's kind of a long time. So maybe a minute, in my own practice, I'll hold poses for 5 or 10 minutes. We won't do that in this practice today. Joy, you're not very visible when you're hiding behind me. All right, so now sit back on your seat bones. Stand your legs up. Have the mat width apart. Feet are flat on the mat. Knees are bent. Hands behind you for support. And I have my fingers splayed out a little bit. So now you're going to very slowly rock your hips from side to side. And the opposite side pelvis, so in this case my left side, my left seat bone wants to come up a little bit, and that's going to happen, and I'm going to allow it to happen. So this is an opener for the right adductor and the left abductor. So it's external rotation on the right leg, internal rotation on the left leg. And you don't have to go very far before you're going to feel an opening. This I promise. And as riders, we activate our adductors a lot. As human beings, our abductors, which is the outer hip, the outer thigh, doesn't get activated very much. And we're going to look at that some today. And now switch sides. And notice one side is always easier and one side is always less easy. So you're thinking about keeping both seat bones down. This right seat bone is not going to stay down. But if I don't encourage it to stay down, it'll leap up in the air. So notice I'm not going all the way down to the floor. Right now my hips aren't going to do that, and that's fine. It's not about, Yoga Journal is not coming today, I promise. And inhale the knees up and exhale over to the right again. And notice if it's any different than the first time. Often the second time is easier for a couple of reasons. One is you've begun to release that tissue, and the other is your body recognizes that this is not a terrible, terrible action. Even though it feels very unfamiliar, breathing into both hips, taking support from your hands, allowing things to open if they want to, not forcing anything. Inhale the knees up, exhale over to the left, noticing if this is any different. So I have a lot more opening with the left adductor right now than I did the first time. My right abductor, the outer right thigh, isn't releasing quite as much. And that's just what I'm observing in my body with this practice right now. Is that interesting to you, Joy? Inhale the knees up. Exhale one more time to the right. And again, noticing if this is any different. So again, I'm getting more opening on that right adductor than I had before. The left abductor is still pretty tight for me. Is that very interesting? That's interesting to you? I'm not sure that's helpful. Might be helpful. There are places that offer goat yoga, so you can have your practice with baby goats jumping all over you. I'm not sure how much I want that, although I am enjoying cat yoga. Inhale the knees up, exhale over to the left. Noticing any difference from the first 2 times we did this. I would have to work pretty hard to exclude this cat from my practice. She really likes my practice. She's very interactive. Inhale the knees up, find your seat bones, bring the heels together, and let your legs open out to the side. And your ankles can be close to your body or far away, whatever is mildly uncomfortable to your body. Again, we're going to be here for a little while, so if your eyes are popping out of your head or you can't breathe, you can make it easier. And what will make it easier would be moving your feet farther away or bringing your knees up higher. Either of those is a perfectly acceptable variation. So you just want to find a place where you say, that's interesting. I have a good friend who has naturally open hips, and when she does this pose, her legs lay flat on the floor. That's not my experience. So this is Baddha Konasana, bound angle pose. And now fold your knees back together. Wiggle around a little bit. So even though we've just been sitting here, those are actually pretty significant opening postures to play with. And now we're going to play with some more. We're going to stay seated for a little while and then we'll come up standing. So take your left knee and point it towards me, folding that left foot up underneath your butt. Take the right leg, cross it over. And if that's not accessible to you, it can stay on the same side. I'm going to cross over, wrap my left elbow around that knee, bring my belly out of the way, place the right hand behind you as a kickstand. Gaze can be over the front knee or it can be sort of 45 degrees over. So this is a little bit of a twist. What I want to use it for today is a hip opener for that outer right hip. You probably noticed that. This is Ardha Matsyendrasana, half Lord of the Fishes pose. Ardha Matsyendrasana. And this is one of the poses that in my own practice, I'll hold this for a very long time, like 5 or 10 minutes. I find it really, really helpful to release the outer hip. It's the outer hip of the leg that's standing up, and to a lesser extent, the outer hip of the folded leg. We're not going to hold it 5 or 10 minutes today in this practice, so you're in luck. So we're still looking at the outer hip. Now I'm going to release the elbow and very carefully begin to stack my knees. And if your knees don't stack, that's fine. The point is to find a place where your body says, wow, that's interesting. This is not supposed to be a comfortable pose, although again, in my practice, I hold this for quite a long time. This is Gomukhasana legs. There's an arm position that we're not going to do today. So your hands can be wherever you would like today, it doesn't matter. Breathing into both hips. Now, this is more intense than Ardha Matsyendrasana, and it's outer hip on both hips. I don't need to say that because you've already noticed that. What a glorious day. Now, to come out, you're going to lean back with great loving kindness. Bring that leg up and over. Straighten that top leg. Let the bottom leg fold so that the foot is against that thigh. And you're going to turn and face that now straight leg. So I'm facing my right leg. And then begin to come forward from the hip hinge with a flat back. Janu Shirshasana, which means knee head pose. And sometimes that's translated as knee to head, head to knee. And sometimes it's translated as head of the knee. And notice, again, this is outer hip, this time for that bent leg. It's a little bit of hamstring for the top leg. Are you helping? Are you a helpy kitty? You're very helpy. So although it's knee head pose, we're not putting our head to the knee. I'm more interested in having the back be fairly flat and looking at the hip opening. So this is hamstring for the straight leg, outer hip for the bent leg. Back is fairly flat. So notice we're doing several poses all on the same side. We'll come through the same sequence and do the other side. Not just yet. So if you have a block or a couple of thick paperbacks, now's a good time to get them. So I have my block handy. It's going to stay by my bent leg side. I'm sitting on a towel. I'm going to remove the towel. And from here, I'm going to lean forward and let this straight leg go straight out behind me. And that means my pelvis has to come up. And I'm going to put that block underneath my pelvis. And it could be flat this way. I'm going to stand it up so that my seat bones, maybe not, so that my seat, my left seat bone has some place to rest. And I want that right leg straight out behind me, looking forward, looking up. Notice, I don't need to say this, this is a big, big hip opener for the front of the back leg and the outer bent leg side. Eka Pada Raja Kapotasana. Eka, 1, Raja, king, Indra, lord. Eka Pada Raja Kapotasana. So it's, Kapota is pigeon. This is one-legged king pigeon pose. So, and it can be done in two, well, there's a bunch of variations. We're going to do 2 variations today. So this is one variation with a back bend looking up, and that's more intense on the back leg. And then we can come forward into a forward bend, and that's more intense on the bent leg side. One variation isn't better than the other. I like to do both variations because they do different things. And having the block or a book underneath your pelvis keeps your pelvis in a balanced position. What you don't want is to have this left side of the pelvis fall down. This is another pose that I will spend 5 or 10 minutes in. This is an incredibly valuable pose. My yoga teacher tells me it's nobody's favorite, but it's one of my favorites. And then come back up to a back bend, shoulder blades come down the back, gaze is forward, breath stays easy. All right, to come out, you're going to lean over towards the straight leg side. Remove your block or your books. Lean back over to the bent leg side. And with great loving kindness, draw that back leg forward. Let both legs stand up with your knees bent. Rock around a little bit. That's supposed to feel like a big opening. You should notice this. You're being very helpful, Joy. I didn't know that I'd used my blanket refolded, but apparently I did. Okay, so now you're going to take your right thigh, point that knee towards me. Let the left leg cross over if that's comfortable for you or accessible to you. Wrapping the right arm around that left knee. Making sure my belly is out of the way. Breath stays easy. Gaze can be forward or it can be sort of 3/4 forward. It's up to you. I'm interested in the hip opening component of this pose, half Lord of the Fishes. Although it is a twist, that's a lesser component for today's practice. This is very helpful today, Joy. She's the entertainment. And now release the elbow and help your knees to stack one on top of the other. You may need to readjust your pelvis for this. And notice that one side is easier than the other. This is the tighter side for me. The other direction, both knees stack really easily. In this direction, they don't stack quite so well. And again, this is a part of my practice that I do for long periods of time. Back when we used to do yoga workshops at the studio in person, I would go to a practice or a teaching and I could be in this pose for an hour. And we're not going to do that for an hour, but this is a pose that I find incredibly useful, so I do it a lot. I have to say this one is no one's favorite. I do it because I find it really useful and valuable to help release my hips particularly, so that all the rest of my day has more comfort and ease. Move my block over to the other side. We don't need it just yet. And now untangle your legs. Let that right knee come out to the side. Left leg is straight. Turning to face that left leg. Coming forward any amount, as long as you can keep your back fairly flat. It doesn't have to be absolutely flat, but sometimes this pose is done as a forward bend, and there is a forward bend component, but I want to have that back bend feel. So open in the heart center, feeling a back bend feel in the back. And what that does is it increases the amount of hip opening I get, which is what I'm using this pose for here. So it's hamstring, and I'm feeling it also in the adductor on the straight leg side. A little bit of adductor and outer hip on the bent leg side. And you feel it wherever you feel it. I can't tell you what to feel. And depending on where your body has flexibility and where it has tightness, you're going to feel things in a different place. There's no right place to feel it. back out. So you have your block or your books over on the right-hand side. Let that right knee point a little bit more forward, and the left knee comes straight out behind you, lifting the pelvis, sliding that block or your books underneath that side of the pelvis, coming up into a back bend feel. Shoulder blades down your back. Ekapada Raja Kapadasana, half king pigeon pose. And then come onto your elbows, forward bend, and notice that that increases the opening on the front leg hip. Press back up to a back bend feel. Shoulder blades down the back. Breath stays easy. Eyes are relaxed. Now to come out, you're going to lean a little bit to the left, remove the block or your books or whatever you have, lean over to the right, and with great loving kindness, swing that leg back around front. Stand both knees up, hands out behind you, and we're going to repeat this action that we did earlier in the practice. Allow both legs to fall to the right, both knees fall to the right. And notice if this is any different than when we did it the first several times earlier in the practice. It's always useful to repeat poses later in the practice because things evolve and change and open. Inhale the knees up, exhale both knees over to the left. Noticing how this compares to your first time. I'm not even going to say how it's different, but just how it compares. Could be the same, I don't know. Inhale the knees up and come to standing. And you want your block or your books handy for this next set. So I have my block set up and I have my chair. See if I can get sort of in camera range. So we're going to do Vishnu's couch as a standing pose. It's typically lying down on your side pose. I'm going to move back a little bit. Easier to see, but today, for today's practice, we're going to do it as a standing pose. So I'm going to stand my left leg up on the block, so my right leg is hanging. I have the chair for balance. I don't want balance to be a component of this pose. So this right leg is hanging, upper body is tall, and I lift that leg out to the side. This activates the gluteus medius, which is a very important postural stability muscle, and it's also a very weak muscle. And by doing this as a standing pose, the weight of your leg becomes a resistance. I'm using the chair for balance. Just opening, opening, opening. And notice that this is also activating the stability around the standing leg hip. All right, let that leg hang back down. I have the chair for balance. And now, this is also going to talk about the stability of the outer hip on the standing leg. Let that top leg, your right leg, touch the floor and then lift it up. So this action comes from the side body and the outer hip on that standing leg. And again, this is a very weak muscle that we need for stability. Isn't that interesting? So you want your body to stay in one alignment, and you're lifting and lowering from the side body and the outer hip. This is not supposed to be effortless. This is a lot of work, okay? Getting tired is normal. But it's really important that we strengthen that outer hip. And there aren't very many activities that we can do that will do that, and this does. So this is a variation on Vishnu's couch. And then release, let both feet come down. Notice how your two legs feel. And I'm going to have to disturb the cat and move my chair. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. I can't pick up the chair with you in it. Maybe I can. It's more awkward when you're in it. So I'm going to move that block over to the chair. And if you want to do this without the chair, that's fine, but I want to take balance out of the equation for today. So I'm standing, I want to be a little closer to the chair. Standing on the block, have the chair for balance. So upper body is tall, opening that leg out to the side. Vishnu's couch. I don't name them. So noticing how much work gets done by that outer, both outer hips, but the one that you don't think about is the standing leg hip. And yet, by golly, there it is. This sounds so easy, and yet, not so much. Right, Joy? Yeah. All right, I'm going to reposition a little bit. So now, with the strength of your side body and that outer hip, lifting and lowering that left side of the body. Isn't that interesting? Vishnu's couch. And then step off. Notice how your two legs feel, the two sides of your body. And now I'm going to move the chair out of the way. Move the block out of the way. And you can come down onto your back. With your knees bent up close to your buttocks. Holding each shoulder blade underneath you. Hands, palms face down. And now we're going to lift and lower in bridge pose. Setu Bandha Sarvangasana. So inhale, both legs up slowly. Pelvis is up slowly. Lower slowly. Not all the way down. Lift up again. So both legs have to push evenly. If we go quickly, or if we stay in a static bridge pose, one leg can take a vacation. And I want to activate both legs pretty evenly. All right, this time the pelvis can come all the way down. Pull your knees into your chest. Wrap your arms around your knees. Rock from side to side. Should feel pretty good. And release your knees. Let your feet come down to the mat. Mat width apart, so quite wide. Hands are out away from the body a little bit. Move the cat's tail. Allow both knees to fall to the right, looking to the left. Now we've done this already several times in a seated position. Here we are in a reclined positions. Duryodhasana. Breathing into both hips, letting the belly be soft, the side body is soft. Inhale the knees up. Exhale, both knees fall to the left, gaze is to the right. Both shoulders stay on the mat. Feel that opening deep inside the side body, deep inside the abdomen. Isn't that interesting? Inhale the knees up, pull your knees into your chest, wrap your hands around your knees and rock from side to side. Release your knees. Let your legs straighten on the mat. I'm going to sit up. You can lie back. Let your arms stay close to your side. Pull each shoulder blade underneath your body so your palms face up. Close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. Allow your body to settle into the floor, into the mat. Let your facial features be soft. Allow your brain to rest in the bottom of the skull. Eyes sink into the back of the socket. Breath is easy. Your tongue rests in the bottom of your mouth. Jaw slightly parted. Back of the neck is long. Throat is open. Feel your shoulder blades flat on your mat. Arms are heavy. Fingers slightly curled. Feel your ribs moving with your breath. The sternum rises and falls with the breath. Allow your organs to rest towards your back body. Lower back is wide and long. Feel your sacrum resting flat on the floor. Allow the wings of your pelvis to open. Allow your organs to rest towards your back body. Thighs are heavy. Notice the softness of your hips right now at this end of our practice that has focused on hips. Notice if there's any extra warmth in your hips, softening, opening. And return to the sensation of the breath. And now begin to wiggle your fingers and toes. Take a deep breath. Bend your knees, place your feet on the mat. And roll to your right side and rest there. With the strength of your arms, press yourself up to seated. Bring your hands to heart center. Bow your head to your heart. I honor the place within you where the entire universe exists. I honor the place within you of peace, of joy, of light, and of love. I honor the place within you where, if you are in that place in me, in you, and I'm in that place in me, there can be only one of us. Namaste. Rub your palms together to generate warmth. Place your palms over your closed eyes. Open your eyes into the darkness and return your hands to heart center. Thank you so much for sharing your practice with me. Notice how you feel for the rest of the day. And when you get up from seated, be very careful because we've done a lot of hip openers and your hips are going to feel a little bit more mobile or open, or they'll feel different. So just be kind to yourself when you go to get up. So when you do go to get up, come to your hands and knees and then press yourself up to standing. And thank you so much for sharing. Have a great day.